They told me it would be a simple diplomatic exchange. A goodwill gesture, they said. One human aboard one of their ships. Integration, cooperation, and all the other Asians bureaucrats throw around when they want to sound like they know what they're doing. I expected a tour, some handshakes, maybe a souvenir laser pen. What I didn't expect was the Vireland flagship Voratha's claw to smell like lightning and burn oil, or for its commanding officer to be 7 feet of armor-clad superiority with ears that could probably detect sarcasm at 30 meters. The ramp descended with an ominous hiss, like the ship itself was sighing at the thought of me stepping aboard. I stood there, duffel bag in hand, translator unit humming softly against my collarbone, and reminded myself, play it cool, Jack. Don't let them see you sweat. Even if the gravity's a touch higher than Earth standard and your spine's already plotting rebellion. Then she appeared, Commander Arixia V. Lawrence. All sharp lines and piercing eyes, moving with the kind of confidence usually reserved for apex predators or dance instructors. She stopped 3 paces from me, tilted her head just slightly, and said, "So, you are the human." "I am," I replied. "Jack Halden at your service." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You are smaller than I imagined." "I get that a lot, usually from people who want to wrestle." A beat of silence. Then, impossibly, a flicker of amusement tugged at the corner of her mouth before vanishing like it had committed treason. She turned without a word, her long, silver hair catching the light like strands of molten wire. I followed, resisting the urge to narrate my own death march. The ship's interior was an alien blend of elegance and menace. The walls shimmered with data patterns that shifted in real time, like the vessel was alive and whispering secrets in a language I wasn't meant to hear. We passed soldiers, tall, lean, armored beings with long ears like hers and expressions that said they were always 30 seconds from vaporizing me. "Don't mind the crew," Arixia said over her shoulder. "They've never seen a human before." "I'll try not to shed on the furniture." Another pause. Was that the ghost of a smirk? No, couldn't be. I was imagining things. Space madness had to be. She led me to my quarters, bare, efficient, and pulsing faintly with ambient energy. No bed, just a vertical resting column. No chair, just a floor mat. The shower, according to the interface, could simulate 14 types of precipitation, including molten fog. I made a note never to select that one. "You will report to the bridge each cycle at second bell," she said. "You will observe and not interfere. Speak only when addressed. Do not touch anything glowing." "Can I touch things that are just ominously humming?" She blinked. "Only if you wish to lose that hand." "Noted." She was halfway out the door when she turned back. Her gaze scanned me from head to toe like she was recalculating something. Then she said it, calm, authoritative, utterly unapologetic. "Behave, little pet." The door slid closed. "Now look, I'm not a prideful man. I've been called worse things than pet. Once, on a diplomatic shuttle to Titan's orbital ring, I was referred to as the squishy biped with questionable hygiene. But something about how she said it, like she just claimed ownership over me in front of witnesses, sent a ripple through my spine. Still, I figured it was a cultural thing. Aliens and their weird social cues. At worst, it meant she thought I was beneath her. At best, it meant she was trying to make a point to her crew. Fine, 2 could play that game. The next morning, I arrived on the bridge precisely 1 minute early. The bridge was a cathedral of technology, sleek consoles, hovering control spheres, tactical overlays woven into thin air. The crew stood at rigid attention. Arixia was seated on what I could only describe as a throne. Of course she was. "Ah, my pet arrives," she said, loud enough for the entire crew to hear. A few snickers. One of them definitely choked on their drink. I smiled, stepped forward, and gave her the kind of slow, confident nod that says, "Yes, I hear you, and I'm about to break your entire chain of command with one sentence. Only yours." Silence. Not just silence, vacuum-level stillness. One of the hovering orbs flickered and crashed to the floor. A console beeped once, then stopped. A junior officer made a noise like a broken flute and hurried out of the room. Every pair of long ears in the room twitched. Arixia's face remained composed for exactly 3 seconds. Then her skin, a pale, iridescent blue, flushed deep crimson from her cheekbones to the tips of her ears. Her pupils contracted. Her fingers curled on the armrest. I raised an eyebrow innocently. Did I say something wrong? She stood too quickly. The motion was fluid, almost defensive, like a fighter startled mid-duel. Her voice, when it came, was tight. "You will follow me now." Oh boy, I'd either offended a sovereign military leader or accidentally proposed. Possibly both. She led me down a corridor, past security gates, and through a pressure-sealed door marked with glyphs my translator hesitated to decipher. Finally, we stopped in a chamber lit only by glowing veins in the walls, bioluminescent conduits pulsing like a heartbeat. "You do not understand what you said," she hissed, face still flushed. "Pretty sure it was only yours. Unless the translator glitched and I actually said, 'Your pants are on fire.' In which case that's weirder." Her eyes flared. In violin culture, such a response is not casual. It is spoken in bonding rituals, in private, between mates. I blinked. "Oh. Yes. So, yes. But I didn't." "You did. Can I get a redo?" "There are no redos." There was a long pause. Then, to my complete and utter shock, she laughed. Not a sneer or scoff, an actual, genuine laugh. It was short, clipped, almost reluctant, but it was real. "I suppose," she said at last, "this is what happens when we bring a human aboard. Statistically, we ruin everything." "Perhaps." She took a breath, composing herself. "But you are still mine, Jack Halden." I raised a hand. "Strictly in a non-romantic, interspecies diplomatic way, right?" Her lips twitched. "We shall see." I groaned. "I'm never going to live this down." "You might not live at all if the crew believes you've claimed me in return." "Wait, what?" She was already walking away. This was going to be a long deployment. The next morning, the door to my quarters hissed open exactly 30 seconds before the internal chime would have woken me, because of course violins didn't believe in sleep being sacred. A low-frequency hum pulsed from the corridor as 2 armored crew members waited, eyes forward, expressions set to, "We don't get paid enough for this." "Commander requests your presence on the bridge," the taller one said, voice clipped and polished. "Can I brush my teeth first, or is oral hygiene considered a declaration of war in your culture?" I asked, stretching. Neither reacted. Violin stoicism, undefeated. 5 minutes later, I was standing beside Arixia again, trying not to fidget while a floating console orb blinked green at my presence like it was mildly disappointed in me. She didn't look at me. Not at first. Her posture was perfect, her focus absolute, her voice steady as she issued commands in a language that sounded like it had been forged inside a cathedral made of static and thunder. I tried not to stare at her ears. Eventually, without turning, she said, "You are to accompany me to the Council of Strike Captains this evening." I didn't bring my formal flip-flops. "You will wear standard dress attire. It has been prepared. You will not speak unless prompted." "Do I get to glare meaningfully at anyone?" "You may blink with dignity." Dignified blinking, got it. The floating orb buzzed suddenly, emitting a tight stream of violin phrases that my translator scrambled to catch up with. Something about outer rim surveillance nodes and unexpected motion patterns. One of the crew, Lieutenant Yara, I think, twitched and tapped at a console with fingers moving so fast it looked like she was playing a particularly aggressive piano. "Unscheduled vessel breach at the Kari perimeter," she said. "Unknown configuration. No active IFF beacon." Arixia's eyes flicked toward the holographic display, now shimmering to life above the table. A strange ship, all asymmetrical plating and twitchy propulsion signatures, coasted along a dark corridor of space like it didn't care it was being watched. A dead zone, uncharted, unclaimed, and definitely unfriendly. Jack Halden, galactic diplomat and designated mistake-maker, raised his hand. Are we in the part of the day where something explodes or the part where someone gives a stern monologue about protocol? Arixia didn't answer. Instead, she tapped a sequence on her command gauntlet and turned sharply. Lieutenant Vec, prep the launch hangar. I want a recon wing shadowing that ship within 5 minutes. If it breathes, I want to know what flavor. The crew moved like they shared a single nervous system. Panels lit up, orders echoed through neural relays, and within seconds the bridge resembled a wasp nest hit with caffeine. Amid the chaos, Arixia gestured to me. You, with me. I followed her down a corridor that I hadn't seen before, filled with dense wiring, ambient starlight bleeding through the translucent hull, and the faint sound of chanting. When I asked about the chanting, she said, "Maintenance crew. They believe singing to the conduit roots reduces static discharge." I nodded. Right, who doesn't love a good static-reducing hymn? She stopped at a pressure-sealed door, scanned her hand, and led me inside what looked like a meditation chamber crossbred with a weapons locker. Holograms hovered in silence, showing abstract shapes orbiting a central core. This is where we interface with predictive algorithms, tactical divination, if you will. Is this the part where I see the future and go mad? You've already declared courtship in front of a warship crew. I doubt madness would be a noticeable shift. She pointed to the swirling holograms. The ship you saw, it's broadcasting entropy. Most ships are bad at small talk, but that seems excessive. Entropy radiation. A signature known only to decaying artifacts left from the precursor epoch, technology predating our species. That shut me up. Arixia turned to me, expression unreadable. I am involving you not because I trust your judgment, but because your unique biological structure may interact with precursor technology in unforeseen ways. You're saying my meatbag might set off ancient alien artifacts. In a manner of speaking. Excellent. I've always wanted to be a science experiment with legs. Later that day, dressed in what the Virelans considered formal attire, it felt like a very stern robe with extra sternness built in. I stood awkwardly behind Arixia as she presented her preliminary findings to the Council of Strike Captains. The chamber was circular, vast, suspended above a singularity core that pulsed like a sleeping god. Around us floated the other captains, warriors, scientists, hybrid tacticians, each surrounded by their own entourage. Arixia spoke with precision, her voice echoing through the chamber. She detailed the entropy readings, the anomalous design of the ship, and its erratic behavior. And the human? One of the captains asked, his long ears twitching. Arixia turned her head slightly. He remains a variable. Another captain leaned forward, scrutinizing me with eyes like bioluminescent glass. He is the one who responded. I coughed. Yes, that's me, the responder. Professional responder of things. Somehow this seemed to amuse the council. A few of them made a gesture that I hoped wasn't the equivalent of flipping me off. After the meeting, back aboard the Voratha's Claw, Arixia stood beside me in the lift chamber. We hadn't spoken since the council adjourned. The lift hummed softly, ascending through layers of command decks. The silence between us thickened until I said, "You know, back on Earth, when someone accidentally proposes, there's usually at least a drink involved. You wish to consume fermented liquid as part of your apology." I was hoping more for forgiveness in the form of non-airlocking. She didn't laugh, but her mouth twitched. "Your survival is currently beneficial. Enjoy the window of usefulness." I placed a hand over my heart. "My usefulness is your command." The lift chimed. The doors opened. She didn't move for a second. Then, as she stepped out, she said softly, "Still only mine." I blinked. "You still read when I say it." Her ears twitched. Neither of us looked back. I woke up to the sound of something growling near my head. In my defense, the Vireland sleep columns weren't exactly user-friendly for creatures with shoulders. Or vertebrae. I flailed out of the upright pod with all the grace of a drunk giraffe and landed hard on the cool, humming floor. The growl repeated. It turned out to be my breakfast, some kind of nutrient sphere slowly disintegrating on a levitating tray, making ominous digestion noises. "Good morning to you too," I muttered at it, then poked it with a stylus. The tray beeped, hissed, and retracted into the wall like it had just been insulted. Probably had. My communicator chirped. "Jack Halden," came Arixia's voice, crisp and perfectly unfazed. "You are to report to Auxiliary Lab 3, immediately." "What about breakfast?" "You will not require digestion for what follows." Somehow that's not comforting. Auxiliary Lab 3 was located in one of the less traveled quadrants of the Vorath's Claw. A quiet deck humming with low-level containment fields and polite warnings about exposure to non-Euclidean geometries. As I entered, the door sealed behind me with a hiss that sounded unreasonably final. Inside, Arixia stood beside a long glass cylinder. Floating inside it was a small, metallic cube slowly rotating and emitting soft pulses of light that probably meant danger in several languages. "This was retrieved from the entropy vessel," she said without preamble. "It is inert but responsive to proximity, specifically yours." "Because I'm biologically unpredictable," I offered. "Or maybe just naturally radioactive." "Both possibilities are being studied." I stepped closer. The cube pulsed once, then projected a series of fractal patterns into the air. My translator began to short out immediately. Is it supposed to do that?" I asked, tapping the sparking interface now blinking, thinking. "Maybe run across its surface." "It is speaking in precursor tongue," Arixia said, stepping forward. "A language not heard in over 10,000 cycles." I reached out instinctively. The cube glowed warmer. Arixia didn't stop me. She watched, silent, her long ears twitching once. When my fingers brushed its surface, there was a hum. A low, harmonic sound that vibrated in my bones. Then everything went dark. Not unconscious dark, just everything dark. No light, no sensation. And then stars. I was suddenly standing in the middle of a vast field of stars, or at least a holographic projection of them, with symbols flickering all around me like the universe had become a screensaver. A voice, mine but not mine, spoke. "Hello, Jack Halden. Designation Contingency Prime. Activation accepted." "Okay," I said aloud to no one. "This is either a hallucination or I've been accidentally enrolled in some kind of ancient alien frequent flyer program." The stars rearranged themselves, forming symbols I couldn't read but somehow understood. Warnings, gateways, things that had been sealed. Then, something approaching from the outer edge. Something wrong. When the vision faded, I found myself on the floor of the lab. Arixia was crouched beside me, her expression somewhere between concern and the face people make when trying to decide whether to sedate you. "What did you see?" she asked. I said, sitting up slowly. "Ancient stars, symbols, a voice calling me Contingency Prime. Oh, and a rapidly approaching cosmic horror, Standard Tuesday." She didn't blink. "You triggered an active response. That artifact has remained dormant for millennia. So I'm what, chosen?" "Possibly. For what?" "That," she said, standing, "is the question I intend to have answered before you accidentally summon a black hole into the lounge again." The door slid open. Lieutenant Yara stepped inside, holding a datapad with a look that suggested she wasn't sure if I should be applauded or tranquilized. "We've identified the symbol broadcast by the cube," she said, offering the pad to Arixia. "It matches a forbidden sector in the Navar spiral. Dead zone. No signal, no matter. Designated the hollow dark." "Of course it is," I muttered. "Why can't ancient alien mysteries ever be in a place called Fluffy Sector or nice asteroid belt with a view?" Arixia glanced at me. "You will be joining the expedition." I groaned. "Do I at least get hazard pay?" "You're not being paid." "Can I at least die dramatically?" "That is expected." Preparation for the mission was swift. The scout vessel, Vyerk's Talon, was sleek, sharp, and entirely too enthusiastic about vaccinating me against 16 forms of space fungus I didn't know existed. As we boarded, I noticed several of the crew whispering as I passed. Arixia noticed too. "They think I've claimed you," she said flatly. "You did call me only yours again yesterday." I was maintaining continuity. "Sure, continuity. That's definitely why you whispered it." Her ears flushed just faintly. The ship launched, plunging us into slipstream space. The stars turned into streaks, then curves, then spirals. Space stopped obeying its usual rules and started looking like someone fed reality into a blender. Inside the observation chamber, I stood with Arixia as the hollow dark approached. It wasn't a location. It was a presence. A patch of space that didn't just absorb light, it uninvited it. Feeling optimistic, I asked. "No," she said, "but I'm curious." "That's worse." "Possibly." The ship slowed. We emerged into silence. No stars, no dust, just void. And in the center of that void, suspended in nothing, was a construct. A perfect sphere the size of a city, humming with unreadable energy. "Your artifact responded to that," said the pilot. "It's sinking." "I really wish I knew what that meant," I muttered. Arixia turned to me, eyes sharp. "Are you ready?" "No." She smirked. "Then you'll do fine." The docking clamps engaged. The doors opened. The hollow dark waited. The air inside the ancient construct didn't feel like air. It had weight, not pressure. Like walking through a dream that hadn't decided whether to let you in or crush you. I stepped onto the platform and immediately regretted all of my life choices. My boots echoed in a way that shouldn't have been possible in a vacuum. Arixia walked ahead of me, unbothered, the only sign of caution being the slight twitch of her long ears. The cube, still clipped to my chest, was pulsing gently, like it was happy to be home. Which would have been comforting, except nothing good ever wants to go home in a sci-fi scenario. Behind us, Lieutenant Yara muttered, "These readings don't make sense. There's no gravity signature, but we're not floating. The structure doesn't even register as mass." "Maybe it's made of stubbornness," I offered. "That's what my report card said in 6th grade. Arixia ignored me. She reached a hand toward a console, if you could call it that, and it bloomed to life, rippling with precursor glyphs. My translator tried and failed to keep up, displaying helpful words like, "and maybe danger," and once, "absolutely do not lick." The room responded to us, not just to movement but to thought. As I considered that, the floor shifted subtly underfoot. Images flickered across the far wall, galaxies spinning in reverse, planets being born in fire, a civilization rising and falling over millennia in the span of seconds. Arixia turned to me. "You activated this. You must engage with it." "I don't even know what this is. For all we know, it's a vending machine for interdimensional snacks. The sphere brought us here. The artifact synchronized to this location, and you were chosen. Chosen by an ancient box with no sense of personal boundaries." She stepped closer. "If you're afraid." "Oh, I'm definitely afraid, but in a charming, relatable way." I reached toward the interface. As my fingers brushed the surface, light exploded outward, not violently, just infinitely. I blinked and suddenly wasn't in the room anymore. I was standing in a version of myself. Literally. I looked down and saw me, but older or newer or sideways. My reflection moved without me moving, raising its hand and pointing. I turned. The space around us dissolved into a new scene, a memory maybe, or a warning. Vessels the size of moons, all bearing the same symbol as the cube, swarmed through space. One by one, they fractured reality around them, opening gates. From those gates came something else. Shadows made of silence. Entities that unmade as they moved. Then came the voice again. Not mine this time, but older, beyond ancient. The threshold must not be breached. The scene shifted again. A chamber, a key, a sealed breach. And then me standing in front of it, alone. Then everything snapped back. I was on my knees. Arixia caught me before I fell flat. "You were gone for 20 seconds, she said. "You stopped breathing for 10. I saw gates, darkness. A warning. I looked up at her and me, at the center of it. Yara approached, holding a scanner that sounded increasingly angry. Your neural activity spiked beyond measurable thresholds. That thing practically rebooted your brain. It's not a weapon, I said. It's a lock, and I think I'm the key. Arixia's expression tightened. If the threshold is real, it changes everything. Glad I could ruin interstellar policy in under an hour, I said, trying to stand. New personal best. We left the chamber in silence, returning to the Vyerk's Talon with more questions than answers. I collapsed into my seat in the debriefing chamber and groaned. So, who wants to explain to the Council that humanity might have just become galactic duct tape? No one volunteered. The return trip through Slipstream was uneventful, if you didn't count the malfunctioning food dispenser that kept throwing nutrient gel at me like it had a grudge. Back aboard the Vorath's Claw, the Council had already requested a full briefing, which meant I got to stand in the same giant floating courtroom again, surrounded by creatures who could probably crush my skull with a sigh. Arixia spoke first, her voice controlled but laced with something new, urgency. The construct is precursor in origin. It activated in response to the human. It displayed visions of breach events. If they are accurate, then something once sealed is beginning to stir. The captains murmured among themselves. One turned to me. And the human, what is his role? I raised a hand. I'm still waiting for the training manual. Right now, I just touch things and hope the universe doesn't explode. That got a few stifled laughs. Maybe I was winning them over, or maybe they were preparing to eviscerate me politely. Another captain leaned forward. If you are a key human, then what does the lock protect? I don't know, I said honestly. But if the precursors built it, it probably wasn't their snack stash. When the meeting adjourned, Arixia stayed behind. I followed her to the observation deck. You did well, she said without looking at me. I hallucinated and almost died, not my best day. She turned, but not your worst. Not by a long shot. There was a pause. Then quieter, she asked. When you were inside the vision, did you feel alone? I considered that. Not exactly. It felt like I was being watched. Not in a creepy way, okay, maybe a little creepy, but more like someone was waiting. For what? For me to choose. She didn't speak after that. We stood there together in the silence of the stars, side by side, just a human, and the warrior who accidentally claimed him. The alarm klaxon sounded 3 octaves lower than usual, which either meant someone had reprogrammed it for dramatic effect or something catastrophic was underway. I stumbled out of my sleeping column wearing half a uniform and the full weight of ancient alien keyholder, responsibility. Yara's voice came through the comm, unusually tense. Threshold breach detected, originating in Sector 19. The lock has begun to fail. I blinked. That's the cafeteria sector. Confirmed. The breach is forming behind the food synthesizers. Of course it is. By the time I reached the bridge, half the consoles were lit up like a festival, and Arixia was already issuing orders in the kind of voice that made planetary governments tremble. Containment fields are holding for now, Yara reported. But entropy distortion is accelerating. We're seeing nonlinear time pockets. One crew member just experienced 5 birthdays. Is he okay? I asked. He's 43 now and deeply confused. The holographic map showed the breach, like a rip in nothing, pulsing at the center of a swirling mess of reality drift. Objects nearby were glitching between past and future states. A fruit bowl blinked into being, aged, then fossilized in seconds. Arixia looked at me. The artifact is responding. It wants you to approach the breach. I really hate being special, I muttered. She handed me the cube. It vibrated gently, almost excited. I turned to leave, then paused. If I don't make it, tell the ship AI to delete my browser history. Arixia stared. What is a browser history? Exactly. The walk to Sector 19 took longer than it should have. Time was folding in weird ways. I passed a hallway twice. I watched myself walk by, holding a coffee I hadn't picked up yet. I reached the breach. It wasn't just a hole in space. It was a mirror turned inside out, showing stars that didn't exist in shapes that hurt to look at. The cube pulled forward. I held it up. The breach pulsed. I took a breath. All right, ancient cosmos. Let's do this. The cube flared with light. A beam shot from its core and struck the breach. The air twisted. My ears popped. Somewhere in the distance, someone screamed, "My pasta," as the galley equipment reversed back into raw ingredients. The breach roared, then a voice, not from outside, from me. Final authority accepted, containment protocol complete. The breach convulsed. Light and dark folded in on themselves, screaming in silence. The cube burned in my hand, but not painfully, more like it was saying goodbye. Then stillness. The breach was gone. I was standing in the middle of a quiet, blinking room. I looked down. The cube had cracked, its surface dull and lifeless. I exhaled. Well, that was horrifying. Behind me, Arixia's voice. "You stabilized the lock. The breach is closed." I turned. No ancient horror pouring out of the food court. I call that a win. She walked toward me, calm but slower than usual. Her gaze searched my face. "Are you changed?" I considered it. Maybe. I understand things I didn't before, about how fragile everything is. How much is hidden under what we call reality. Also, I might be able to see slightly into the past now. Jury S out. Her eyes narrowed. "You are smiling." I saved the galaxy and I made a time joke. I get one smile. A pause. Then she tilted her head. "Do you still belong to me?" I met her eyes. "Only if you still want me." Her ears flushed just slightly. "You are extremely irritating." I offered my hand. "Then you'd better keep me where you can see me." The days that followed were oddly quiet. The council commended the mission, sort of. They spent 20 minutes debating whether my actions constituted a sanctioned intervention or a cosmological accident. Yara got promoted for keeping the containment field stable. The crew member with 5 birthdays received therapy and cake. The artifact was stored in the deepest vault on the ship, inert now but never forgotten. And me. I stayed aboard, not because I had to, because I wanted to. The galaxy hadn't changed, but I had. I wasn't just a diplomatic tag-along anymore. I was part of the